Greetings. My name is Timothy Marshall, and this is my narrative on data collection, observation, and field notes for the class Qualitative Research Methods, Module 5 assignment for the American College of Education. My narrative will explain the observation environment, give a brief shot of the field notes that will also be attached as an appendix, and reflections on the observations that I made. My observation is on the registration and applications and admissions area of a large college in the district, in the Dallas County Community College District. And the college is Eastfield College, which serves the Mesquite, Texas area. The date and time of the observation is Friday, August 10th, 2018, from 2:22 p.m. to 3:22 p.m. We're in the middle of our fall registration period, where we see varied amounts of students over time. However, next week will be the rush for students. They typically come, about 40% of our students show up in the last week of registration. The location of the observation, again, at Eastfield College. It's in the College Center, a building centrally located on the campus that houses our admissions and our records and our advising location. The observation takes place in the admissions records area, a large open area that has a number of stops for the student. Those stops include computer kiosks for them to carry on registration if they do not need to see an advisor or an applications staff member. There are also staff members located out in the open area at stand-up columns or stand-up kiosks that can help the student, guide them to the right location. And there are a number of admissions windows where the actual advisors, the advisors for academic programs sit. The video here that I'm showing provides a sweep of the area. From my seated position at the back, you will see a number of kiosks, a number of waiting areas, and a number of stand-up kiosks for the navigators. The field notes that I collected are tough to fit on one page, so I'm giving you a shot of the Excel spreadsheet that I used to mark down the information that I was observing throughout the 1 hour that I was in the registration area. My focus on the registration area is to determine how long it took students to move through the processes. Again, there's multiple processes, and students can find themselves in different stages of those process, from applicant to a student that's concurrently enrolling to a student that's submitting information for graduation. I decided to do unobtrusive measurement because of the size and location of the registration area. It would be too hard for me to track or follow somebody and interview them while they were in the process of registering. The students have a specific number of tasks they have to finish, and in those tasks it would have been intrusive of me to insert myself and ask them questions about it. So I did unobtrusive observation. And across this spreadsheet you can see the types of things that I was observing, from the number of students there, if they were accompanied by any family members, the types of family members, the emotional state they found themselves in, what time they completed their tasks, and if they did, and then some specifics to gender, race, and some comments with regards to how they've seemed to be familiar or not with the processes at hand. So my reflections, again, I used the unobtrusive method. A total of 38 students I counted from in that hour that had, from the moment I sat down, I did not concern myself with those that were already in the middle of the process. I decided just to start with those that entered into to the area, and I watched them as they made their way through the different stations. Of the 38 students, 15 students attended with family members, so it's a higher than percentage that I expected. But this is an area where we are noticing a little bit of growth, where when a student arrives, they typically will bring some friend or family with them. So 39.5% of the students brought family members. Of those family members, 7 of those students attended with a parent. 5 students attended with their siblings. 4 students attended with their own children. And 2 students attended with a spouse. And the reason I know that it's a spouse is because as they were walking by, I could hear snippets of conversations, and I could identify that at least 2 students had their spouses with them. Of those students that attended with family members, 6 of those above attended with multiple family types. So those multiple family types typically were a student that was attending with a parent and 1 or multiple siblings, or in some cases there was 3 generations where a student was attending with both a child and with a parent, or with a sibling and a child. Of the group, 21 students were female, 55.3%, and 17% were male, 44.7%. And that tracks along the lines of our overall enrollment. We, in the community college space here in North Texas, are predominantly female population. In some of our colleges, it's as high as 60%. From an ethnic background, 14 students were African American, that's 36.8%. 16 students were Hispanic, 42.1%, and 8 students were white, 21.1%. And again, those numbers adequately reflect the population at Eastfield College. Eastfield College is one of our colleges that is noted as a Hispanic serving institution. Further reflections, while I was there, 12 students completed their tasks while being observed. That meant that then from the time they walked in to the time I left, they completed what they came to do. And those completion rates, the 31.6%, is mostly targeted at those students that entered into the self-service area and finished their application, or they finished their enrollment, or they finished their graduation application. So those students, they knew what they were there for. They went directly to either the kiosk or to an advisor and completed their tasks. Those tasks took an average of 13.67 minutes to complete. So again, once they knew and were aware of the process, they were able to move themselves through the process rather quickly, because of the wealth of options they had, either seeking out a navigator, an advisor, or taking care of their own business in the self-service area. Of all the students, I watched and observed for their emotional state, and saw that I used a 4-part observation that determined whether they were anxious, calm, happy, and satisfied. So the largest group were the calm group, the 71.1%. Those students, when I say calm, they might have taken a long time there, but they did not seem frustrated or anxious or unhappy with the actual process. 23.7% of those students, the overall students, were anxious. And anxiety spread from the general new student anxiety that typically comes when a student first enters into a college registration or application arena, to anxiety over the results of either an application process or a graduation application process. So I would say they were evenly split. The anxiety was evenly split between those that were anxious before the process began and those that were anxious as the process finished. 2 happy and satisfied customers or students were mentioned. It was very interesting to find that someone that would be considered happy, where they had outward signs of happiness with regards to laughter or celebration. One student did find out that they had been auto-graduated from a plan and celebrated right there in front of me. And another student, these are, even though it's 2.6%, they represent one student each. One student was satisfied, and that student was a young student that had his parent and an older sibling along with them, and visited the self-service kiosk to prove to his father that yes, he was enrolled, and yes, he had passed application, and his satisfaction came in a very quick manner, in that he was able to prove to his parent that he did satisfy the requirements. Overall, most students were familiar with the process. So those that entered in to the building, 60.5% of those that came in while I was there seemed to know exactly where they needed to go. They sought out information and were, again, familiar with the process to know that even if they didn't get served quickly, it was part and parcel of the overall experience. So they maintained their calmness throughout the period. Again, those that were anxious, they typically needed to help to move from one station to the next. And this was accomplished by both site staff and or older family members who were present, if they were present. So those that had family members present seemed to have either a sibling or a parent that, even if they were not aware of the environment, they calmed them down by engaging the student in other areas by saying, let's take our time, let's look around, let's follow other people, let's see what this place is about. Those types of conversations were heard over and over again for those students that were anxious and had family members. A couple of times while students were waiting that were anxious with family members, there were conversations where you could tell that the family members were distracting the student, saying, oh, this is not a long wait, or what are we going to do this weekend? What's going to, what are our plans? So another reflection I found out that the layout that was, that we've incorporated at Eastfield College reduced congestion. We had navigators stationed out in the reception area at stand-up kiosks. They didn't look like kiosks, as the screens were embedded in the furniture. They looked just like tables where a staff member could be engaged in, but that staff member had access to our computer systems and were able to guide students, hence the term navigators, to the right area of the building, whether they needed to pay a bill or to see an advisor or to even just start an application from scratch. Those navigators were able to move students from place to place. And for those students that were familiar with the process, they were kept out of the congestion by engaging those processes via computer terminals that were in the peripheral area. So not too many computers were seen in the middle of the room, but they could be found ringing the area, and that kept that group away from the group that needed to speak to someone. From this observation, I have a couple of recommendations. Because those computers are in peripheral areas, they should be, there was no signage inside the building that could tell somebody that you needed to go. If you needed a computer, this is where you can go get them. They had to be sought out and found, and there's a lot of nooks and crannies in that area, and in some cases they were apparent, in many cases they were not. So increased signage. Also, the navigators were, even though they were present in the reception area, there was no signage directing a student to, this is a person that can help you, or, come here first for help. So the navigators, over the short period of time I were there, were not crowded, but I could anticipate that these would be better served. They could have more people walking in their direction if given instructions. So some of that anxiety of the people not knowing how to move from one station to the next, some signage would have reduced that anxiety. Also, as that increasing number shows that 39.5% of our students are coming with family, there's noticeably a lack of materials for families to engage with to pass time. And some of these, if you're coming in for an application and you want to move all the way through the process, it could take about an hour and a half to 2 hours to get through application, see an advisor, take the standardized testing to get yourselves appropriately aligned with a course, and then get into enrollment. So right now there's just a couple of waiting areas that have really no materials for a student or a parent to pass the time with. So the one thing I did notice that was nice was that some of those areas did have charging stations for phones and tablets, but there should be some material for the families to engage with. And that even includes maybe a little toy area for parents that bring their children or students that have younger siblings. So that's my observation. And again, this will be appendicized with the actual notes that I took. And thank you very much.